Karen, fire away. You got the mic with you? Yep.
It is about the overcloaking. Is that okay?
Yes.
Yeah. At Mary's workshop a couple of years ago, I was really angry and I was asked to leave because of that.
Yes.
And sometime late last year, you said something to me in passing about when I was overcloaked there.
Yes.
So then I'm thinking, if an overcloaking spirit is in a better condition of love than me, and they're angry and I'm angry, I can't quite understand how that works.
Yeah, well, you see, again, you're analysing everything I'm saying intellectually rather than feeling about what I'm saying. So let's discuss that. Remember, we talked, overcloaking is when a person is overcloaked for most of their life, right? Yeah. And a lot of times we are in a worse condition than the person overcloaking us. Also, oftentimes we are in just the same condition as a person who is influencing us from the spirit world. And in the moment of rage, you lowered your condition to the point where a woman in the spirit world who had experienced the Holocaust in Germany, who now had huge amounts of rage, could overcloak you and then begin to express herself through you. And whenever you get yourself into these kind of rages, you are temporarily lowering your own condition to the point where almost anyone in the spirit world can connect with you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So remember that the statements about overcloaking were more about permanency with overcloaking spirits. In your case, you experienced a temporary overcloaking, which happens to most people in the course of their life. And we've had it happen in our relationship and so forth as well. And it only happens when we lower our condition and refuse to deal with certain emotions that are being triggered at the time. If we are actually open and humble to the emotion that was triggered at the time, it's very rare for an overcloaking experience to occur. But as soon as you are not humble to the underlying emotion, in your case, you weren't humble to some fear that you had, this caused you to become enraged, and when you become enraged, you lowered your condition temporarily, and in that place, bang, anybody pretty much in the spirit world who's in a similar place can connect with you and express themselves through you.
Thank you.
Does that make sense? That's how many murders occur, actually. Many murders occur through exactly that process. A person lowering their condition temporarily through some unhealed emotion that they're unwilling to be humbled to experience without harming somebody. And then before they know it, they've been overcloaked by a spirit who feels very much the same, and they've taken an action that it has harmed and killed somebody else. Yeah.
So we
very
need
dangerous.
to maybe clarify that point about the condition, yeah? In that...
And a lot of time, yeah, I feel a lot of times too, many of us overestimate our own spiritual condition. You didn't like that comment much, eh? We overestimate our own spiritual condition. Many of you do have similar levels of rage to a murderer in the spirit world who would overcloak you under certain circumstances. And you're not aware of it at the moment because you heavily suppress it. Does that make sense? And in the heavy suppression of the emotion, there is a denial of the emotion. There's a denial that the emotion exists within. When we deny that an emotion exists within, what we finish up doing is creating circumstances that are there to expose the emotion. If we allow ourselves to experience the emotion, we won't damage another person. If we have some ethics, if we have some focus on truth, if we have our feet shod with the peace, we want peace rather than violence, then we would not respond to such a spirit. But many of us don't have those kind of feelings. And so what happens when a feeling overcomes us that we're in denial of, ethics go out the window, peace goes out the window, truth goes out the window. And before we know it, we're pretty much doing exactly what a spirit who's in the same state wants us to do. And in that place, we can have hordes of spirits come to us even in that particular moment. So we can lower our condition in an instant through taking a certain course of action. A beautiful part of the Robert James Lee's books where he says that issues of the rest of our life often turn on a diamond point. And what he meant by that is that often it's just one tiny, little, sharp decision that is made that it can affect the rest of our life negatively if we do not have these kind of protective things to guide our life. Yep. Thanks, Karen. So
I need to ask a question to clarify that.
Let's go with Mary first, and then
Nancy.
If you leave your hand up.
So when we make that decision, though, and we act, we kind of become fertile ground.
Do you want to stand where you're speaking?
Yeah, we kind of become fertile ground for the spirit, don't we?
Yes.
For the negative spirit rather than God's truth.
Yes.
And then they add their intention to our own,
yes.
and ours is to suppress or deny. They add theirs. We take a course of action that actually does degrade our soul condition.
Yes.
So in that sense, someone in a lesser condition can overcloak us.
Well, that we have lowered our condition temporarily to enable them to overcloak us, and then in overcloaking us, they can influence us to make a choice or decision that degrades our condition that could also result in our being permanently overcloaked by a person. Sure. I have met many people in this life where that has happened in our personal interactions, where a person, for example, comes to me and they say, AJ, I'm willing to get any feedback from you that you're willing to give me. Now, you're opening a can of worms there when you say that, right? But anyway, I take a person at face value and say, no worries, here's the feedback. And I don't plan when to say it or how to say it or how public or non-public it is, I just say it. Because they've said to me they're open to any feedback, and I've taken them at their word. From that moment on, many people have become very enraged. All of a sudden, groups of spirits who dislike myself attached to them, and then some of them have spent the rest of their life since that moment just attacking me. They've spent their resources, money, websites, all sorts of things just to attack me. Just because they are unwilling to actually receive the feedback that they said originally they were willing to receive. In that moment, what they did was they asked for feedback, so they were on the path, if you like, of trying to discover more truth. They got feedback that they did not want to hear, right? And instead of going, well, I don't want to hear that, so that's fine, they decided to have feet that ran to violence, right? And as soon as you make that kind of active decision, you're going to have a lot of spirit mates helping you with that decision. And so you become overcloaked by spirits, and now those spirits and you acting out of violence degrade your condition, not because I'm anyone special, but because any person you attack is going to degrade your own condition. Every time you attack somebody, you're acting violently, you're going to degrade your own condition. And so they're degrading their condition every time they engage this attack. Now, the more they engage the attack, the more they degrade their condition, the more these spirits can have influence over them, and eventually some of these people have gotten to the point now where they're not even living their own life anymore. They're living the life of the spirits who are overcloaking them. That's how a spirit who is in less condition than you finishes up helping you get into the same condition they are, right? By you having openings in this area of how you put on your suit of armour. And as soon as you have openings, there is a possibility of temporarily lowering your condition in a moment. And because you're not staying firm to some of these principles, spirits overcloak you in that moment. And instead of recognising the mistake, which is an option, you choose actively to act in harmony with the mistake you've just made. And as soon as you start doing that, you are on a very, very fast, slippery slope downwards, right, into the hells. And eventually you will end up being overcloaked generally by the groups of spirits who influenced you in that degree, to that degree. Yep. So we've met people who are not overcloaked. We've had discussions with them where they've said they're open. We've said something to them that they have been either offended or angered or upset by. And after that point in time, lowered their conditions through the desire to attack. And as a result of that, from that moment on, became overcloaked. So just as many people who have benefited from what we're talking about have actually harmed themselves from what we're talking about because of this. It's a sobering thought, isn't it? In a way. You know, unless we're willing to act in harmony with these principles of ethics, of morality, of truth, peace, faith, unless we're going to act in harmony with these particular principles, eventually we'll be led by any person who wants to attack us, we'll be led down a path that eventually creates our own destruction. The destruction, not that our soul can be destroyed, but the actual soul is so shriveled in the end that we're definitely not, which we'll talk about soon, being saved, right, from the results of those actions.
Karen, could I just add that in that situation in the workshop, I felt there was a lot of very rageful spirits around you that you're used to doing what they say.
You're terrified of them.
When there was a challenge put to them around their control of you just by your participation, you became very frightened. And because I was consistent about it, I feel they became more enraged. You became so frightened that then you were willing just to be angry with me because of the level of terror that was coming up in you about not doing what they said. Yeah. So I feel that some of it was your rage in response to avoiding terror, but then also, obviously, because you avoided the terror and went into your own rage, they could add to that as well. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, it's